Welcome to James Joyce's divine and delirious comedy Finnegans Wake. In this episode, number 22, we'll hear Irish-Canadian actor and my good friend and colleague Richard Harte performing pages 100 to 103 to conclude Chapter 4 of Joyce's last novel. I'm Adam Seelig, the director of the reading you'll soon hear. The film of Chapter 4, the same chapter you'll hear today, is now complete and will soon be screening at festivals, starting with the Toronto Irish Film Festival at the TIFF Lightbox in March of 2026. Please join One Little Goat Theatre Company's mailing list online for the full announcement. Finnegans Wake is a production of One Little Goat Theatre Company. One Little Goat is filming and recording all 17 chapters, roughly 30 hours, of Joyce's Finnegans Wake before live audiences in various locations, screening and releasing them along the way, with the aim of completing the entire book in time for its 90th birthday, May 4th of 2029. One Little Goat Theatre Company is an official charity in Canada and the United States. If you'd like to support our work, please visit us online at www.onelittlegoat.org to make a charitable donation. To get in touch, you'll find our email address on One Little Goat Theatre Company's website, and we'd love to hear from you. The last lines of Chapter 4, which you'll soon hear, are among my favorite in all of Finnegans Wake. I hope you find them as beautiful and evocative as I. It helps that Joyce chose as inspiration for these last lines one of the most beautiful and evocative moments in the King James Bible, the opening of Psalm 137. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. What the Wake does with this is nothing short of breathtaking. The rivers of Babylon become, quote, the waters of Babalong, close quote, connoting the babble of a brook, the babble of a baby, the length of a river, and the babble of the Wake's dream language, which manages, like the biblical Tower of Babel, both to unify many languages into one while dividing its singular language into many. The harps of the psalm will become hearts in the Wake, and the willows of the Bible, known for their weeping, will become trees and stones in the Wake, anticipating the metamorphoses of the two washerwomen we'll meet in Chapter 8, known for their wagging, their gossiping, their babbling by the river of Dublin. The Babylon of exile is here too. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? The same psalm goes on to ask. The note-perfect end of Chapter 4, to my ear, is the answer. Today's excerpt marks a major transition in the Wake. Chapters 2, 3, and 4 focused on Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, or HCE. That trilogy of chapters is sometimes referred to as the Humphread. The end of Chapter 4 shifts our attention to Anne Olivia Pluribel, or ALP, and the following chapter, Chapter 5, will focus on her as River, as spouse, and as author of the famous letter that promises to rehabilitate HCE's reputation. We are moving away from land and Dublin City as personified by our male protagonist HCE toward water and River Liffey as personified by HCE's wife, our female protagonist ALP. We are, in the language heard earlier this chapter, moving, quote, back towards mother waters. Tide is turning, hence Chapter 4 ends at Island Bridge on the Liffey. Edmund Epstein, in his guide through Finnegans Wake, explains, quote, Anne Olivia is tidal. Twice a day following the ebbing ocean tide, she slips downstream through Dublin City and to the mouth of Dublin Bay, where she runs into the Irish Sea. Then, with the turn of the tide, she is borne upstream by the incoming flow through Dublin Bay and Dublin City back to the weir at Island Bridge. Then the tide turns again, and Liffey begins to move once more toward the sea. Close quote. These tidal patterns at Island Bridge, located beside Phoenix Park, are explicitly invoked on the last page of Chapter 4. Quote, At Island Bridge she met her tide, at a bomb, at a bomb, at a bomb, bomb, boom. Close quote. But before we reach this last page of Chapter 4, here's what happens in today's excerpt in sequence. We begin with a German-sounding warning when the typical call to attention, Achtung with a T gets smeared with a bit of feces, becoming Achtung with a D. This opening Teutonic passage, or maybe I should say Dududonic passage, translates into something like, "Attention, the Viking king visits beautiful young girls. Three somebodies adventure with a giant foreigner in Phoenix Park." What we have here is a remix of HCE's alleged sexually suggestive sins in Phoenix Park. Early on, this same chapter mentioned, quote, "the serpentine in Fornix Park," close quote, harking back, way back, to the serpent in the Garden of Eden and the sinfulness of Adam and Eve. Fornix is a brothel in Latin, giving us a current word for sinful sex, fornication. So Dublin's Phoenix Park is the site of original sin and the consequent fall of humanity. But what falls down in the wake must rise up, like the phoenix that gives the park its name, or like the genitalia of HCE in the sex scene of the following paragraph, which, hilariously, subversively, combines papal and sexual images and language. Making their appearance in this passage are the smoke that shoots from the Sistine Chapel, a Vatican climax if ever there was, alongside words like snake, there's that original sin again, beaver, an exuding amber liquid, and, perhaps most creatively and certainly most phallically, a, quote, porphyroid butter tower, close quote, with porphyroid conjuring something purplish and hard as a rock. Now all eyes are on ALP. Women are wondering, quote, was she fast, close quote? And the questions accumulate from there. Why or whether, who, what, whence, what, which, etc. What we discover is that ALP gave HCE 111 children and somehow still finds the energy to defend her beleaguered spouse. If anyone will save HCE from his alleged sins and the salacious claims that have hounded him mercilessly from the moment we met him back in Chapter 2 all the way till now, it's ALP. She reminds me of Bessie in Robbie Robertson and the band's 1969 song, Up on Cripple Creek. Up on Cripple Creek, she sends me. If I spring a leak, she mends me. I don't have to speak. She defends me. A drunkard's dream if I ever did see one. For HCE, ALP is, quote, she who shuddered him after his fall and waked him without sparing, close quote. And if need be, she'll stamp out those who defame her spouse, quote, to crush the slander's head, close quote. Much as Mary and Jesus in Caravaggio's painting Madonna and Child with Saint Anne stomp on the evil serpent's head. I'll link to the painting on One Little Goat's podcast page for those who want a closer look. What accounts for the longevity of ALP and HCE's relationship is their formula, not uncommon to many couples today, namely quarrel, make up, and endure. Quote, tiff tiff today, kissy kissy today, and age-long pine tomorrow na. Then who but crippled with children would speak up for dropping with sweat? Close quote. So long-suffering is ALP that her age-long pain dates back to the very genesis of man and womankind. As we heard earlier, quote, she who shuddered him after his fall and waked him without sparing and gave him keen and made him able. Close quote. ALP is Eve, saddled with Cain and Abel and, by the sounds of it, another 109 kids. HCE is Adam, working by the sweat of his brow. They are a timeless couple, less in love than in the throes of life. Now it's time for Richard's performance of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, page 100, line 5, to the end of page 103 for the conclusion of Chapter 4. The performance was filmed and recorded at Type Books on Queen Street West in Toronto on January 22nd, 2024, with a live audience.
Achtung! Posar! Attention! Vicroy besides, smoky young piggy schoolies. Try posh dernies event there, medlach lana father kefinis gehaven. Banalana bangs ballyhooly out of her buttery of a bull of vogue. But their bright little contemporaries notwithstanding, on the morrow and morn of the suicidal murder of the unrescued expatriate, as like as a snake come slidgewing down that oak tree onto the Duke of Beavers. You may have seen some liquid amber exude exotic from a balsam poplar at Partinalac's limestone road and cried, Abyss magnifica, not noble fur. 9:15, imploring his recipiency, saw the infallible spike of smokes jut stiff punctual from the 7th gable of our Quintus Centimachus's porphyroid butter tower, and then thirsty PM with oaths upon his lastingness, on Caicos or auspices, and as long as Pattermoor. The lamps of maintenance, beacons far afield, and half the zuggerat, all brevet named, a wasting wyvern, the tawny of his mane, the swing low swaying blue paw, the outstanding man, the law-like lady, being litten for the long, oh land, how long, life's night, with suffusion of fine glass transom and lead light panes. Wherefore, let it hardly by any being thinking be said either or thought that the prisoner of that sacred edifice, where he and Ivor the boneless or an Olaf the hide, was at his best a one-stone parable, a rude breathing on the void of to be, a venter hearing his own Bach speech in backwards, or more strictly, but tri-stern initials, the clue key to a world room beyond the room world. For scarce one, or pathetically few of his dode canal salmon livers, cared seriously or for long to doubt with Kirk the old Van Dykey, the gravitational pull perceived by certain fixed residents, and the capture of uncertain comets, chance drifting through our system, suggesting an authenticitatum of his eloquitudinous, the canonicity of his existence as a tesseract. Be still, O quick, speak him dumb. Hush, ye fronds of Alma. Dispersal women wondered. Was she fast? Do tell us all about, as we want to hear all about, so tell us all about her. The why, or whether she looked a lottie like Ussies, or whether he had his wind up like them's shut. Notes and queries, tidbits and answers, the laugh and the shout, the yards and downs, now listed to one and neither, and list them down, and smoothing out your leaves of rose. The war is o'er. Whim, 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 whim. Was it Unity Moore, or Estella Swift, or Verena Fay, or Querta Quaidam? Thomas, Marcoom for your uncle. Big eyes, hold that med your leg. Who, for a second time of asking, was then the scourge of the parts about folk rich Luca Lizard? It was wont to be asked, as in ages behind of the homo capita erectus, what price Peabody's money? Or to put it bluntly, whence is the Herdington's white cravat? As in epochs more Cainozoic, who struck Buckley? Though nowadays, as then times, every school filly of 70 moons or more who knew her entomologies, and every colleen ball the roof, and every red flannel waving war wife, and widow peace upon Dublin wall forever, knows as yas is yas how it was Buckley self, and we need no blood and paper to tell it neither, who struck, and the Russian generals instead of Buckley, who was caddishly struck by him when beat ourselves. What full pride, Paul, poison in the spy of 3 castles, or which hate-filled smiley cellar, and that such a vitriol of venom, that Queen's Head enfranchisement, a quiet stinking plaster zeal could cover, pre-posted or post-paid. The lounge lizards of the pump room had their 9 days' jeer, and pratch cats at their pletch pills too, and all in punning beside. Zvast past Bismus, the zany zonies, when, still believing in her own glass, when his eyes were twinklings, that the upper reaches of her mouthless face and her impermanent waves were the better half of her, one nearer him, dearer than all, first warm creature of his early morn, bond woman of the man of the house, and murmur of all the Machavics, she who had given his eye for her bed, and a tooth for a child, till 1 and 110 and 100 again. Oh me and oh ye, cadet and prim, the hungry and Anne Green, and if she is older now than her teeth, she is hair that is younger than thine, my dear. She who shuddered him after his fall, and waked him without sparing, gave him keen, and made him able, and held at his illest to each arch of his nose. She who will not raster from her running to seek him till, with the help of the Okeanic, some such time that she shall have been after hiding the crumb ends of his enormousness in the are you looking for pearl far sea, Uri, stood forth. Burns burn the gorg of the old dad world, in Gogar's name, for Gagar's sake, dragging the countryside in her train, Finnegan here and Funnegan there, with her Louise Quain's brogues and her colander buzzle and her little Belair bow, and on 2 times 20 curly cornies for her head dress, specs on her eyes and spuds on her eyes, and a circumfix riding her Parisian's cockneys, avant her straddle from Egan, when tink, tink, the churchyard close clinked, stepped the Wajazzy Mass Sunday. Sola, with pawns, prelates, and pukas pelleting in her piece bag, for handy man the chub, the squirrel, bisbask, to crush the slander's head. Weary weeny white, plead for more and more, Notre Dame de la Vie, mercy of thy balm-heartsy heat, O Groudnix beyond about a day, ward of the drogas, bulk him no bulkus, and let him rest, though way far, and take no grave spoil from him, neither mar his mound. The bane of thought is on it. Where? But there's a little lady waiting, and her name is A.L.P., and you'll agree, she must be she. Her holden hair heaps hanging down her back. He spent his strength among Carum Scarums, Poppy Narancy, Gelia, Clora, Marinka, Annaline, Parm. And ilk of those dames had her rainbow humours yelled for Wilco or whims, but he coined a cure. Tiff tiff today, kissy kissy today, an age-long pine tomorrow now. And who but crippled with children would speak up for dropping with sweat? Sold him her lease of 999t, dresses on dresses, so dainty. Goo, the Groot gudgeon, gulped it all. Who was the COD? Bum. At Island Bridge she met her tide. At a bum, at a bum, at a bum, bum, boom. The Finn had a flux, and his ever ride. At a bum, at a bum, at a bum, bum, boom. We're all up to the years in hues and cribbies. That's what she's done for we. Whoa. No mad may roam with Nabuch, but let nae man laugh at Jordan. For we have taken our sheet upon her stones, where we have hanged our hearts in her trees, and we list as she bibs us by the waters of Babalong.
That was Richard Harte reading the concluding pages of Chapter 4 from Finnegans Wake, recorded live at Type Books on Queen Street West in Toronto on January 22nd, 2024. Join us for episode 23 when Richard begins Chapter 5 of Finnegans Wake. This podcast series is taking a break between chapters to focus on the film production of future chapters, so please note that the exact date of the next episode release is to be determined, and we'll then resume our fortnightly podcast releases every other Thursday. In the meantime, to be sure you don't miss the episode, why not follow or subscribe to this podcast? For more on One Little Goat's Finnegans Wake project, including transcripts of this podcast and the complete films of chapters 1, 2, and 3, visit our website at onelittlegoat.org. And to hear about upcoming performances and screenings, join our mailing list also on our website. One Little Goat Theatre Company is a non-profit, artist-driven, registered charity in the United States and Canada that depends on donations from individuals to make our productions, including this one, possible. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation through our website, www.onelittlegoat.org. Finnegans Wake is made possible by Friends of One Little Goat Theatre Company and the Emigrant Support Programme of the Government of Ireland. Thank you for your support. And thank you to the artists for this episode. Richard Harte, sound by William Bembridge, stage management by Sandi Becker, directed by yours truly, Adam Seelig. A big thanks to Claire Foster and the staff and owners of Type Books, as well as to our wonderful live audience. Thank you to everyone at the Irish Consulate in Toronto, and thank you to Production Consultants Cathy Murphy, Andrew Moodie, and Shai Rotbard-Seelig. Thank you for listening.